All right, music is organized sound, whether organized by us or a machine which has an organized function, or by electrical feedback through electrical organization. Now, what do we perceive as a musical tone or a musical timing, and what do we perceive as noise? Now, a tone has what you call a regular periodicity, okay? So in other words, it's an even number of vibrations on a logarithmic curve, which is regularly periodic, okay? So the sum or difference or whatever of these peaks and troughs is the tone that you're hearing. And same with a rhythm, has a regular 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1E and a 2E and a TE and a 4, irregular periodicity. Now if a sound is aperiodic, we perceive that as noise. It does not have a regular periodicity, it kind of is all over the place, right? So we call that noise. And both of these occur in nature, and one is rather just a version of the other. Okay. Now, I have my guitar with me, which I don't know how I'm going to hold that and this. But anyway, to demonstrate what is a tone and what is a noise, first let's go with noise because that's quicker. Here's your tone. It has a regular pulse to it. And more importantly, it's logarithmic, okay? Now, that means that it logarithmically goes up, hits a peak, turns around, goes back down logarithmically, hits a trough, turns around, etc. Now, if I were to interrupt the curve of that sine wave, that abruptness does not subdivide evenly like this does into component parts, okay? But rather you hear that edge as noise, because it's, imagine like if you have a bunch of chimes, or let's say like the spokes of your bicycle, you pluck each one and it kind of makes like a dong, but if you go really fast while it's spinning, it just sounds like, you know, the impact of whatever you're striking the metal with just going brrrr. So in other words, you get down to a frequency which is too low to be perceived as a tone, doo, 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 and just sounds like a wah, 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 wah. And that is a pulse, a regular pulse, but an irregular pulse like that, wah, 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 just sounds like a bunch of stuff colliding, okay? Now, this is what makes up a tone, okay? Let's just say, here's your guitar string. Shit. So here's like the neck of your super cool guitar, right? And it's like got these super cool horns, and like, this is like, right? So you got this really wicked guitar, right? And everyone knows you're serious because you got this cool guitar. Now this is the bridge. Okay, this is where the strings stop, and the strings stop right here. So this length is your wavelength, okay? Now watch this. Let me get the guitar real quick, and I will show you how the subdivisions of this length occur. And they occur at regular mathematical intervals. I'm not going to get into scales and chords today. I'll do that on another day. So, the wavelength that we're dealing with, let's say on this thickest string here, is the pitch E, it's 82 hertz. Now, if I split this in half, I'm putting this whole vibration into half as much space 2 times, okay? So that means we're going to have double the frequency. And I'm holding my camera, so I have to do this with my one finger and then the other. I'm going to split that string in half, and you're going to get double the energy Oops, sorry. It's twice as high. It's twice the frequency. This is 82. That's going to be 164 cycles per second. So this wavelength here, we're talking about, is going to be 82 back and forths per second. Okay? And then as we subdivide further, we're going to split the guitar string into 3 against 2. So that's this sound. We go up to this fret here, and we get a 5th, right? Do, re, mi, fa, sol. A 5th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's subdividing this into 3 equal parts, okay? And then at the next octave, we're subdividing it into 4 equal parts, okay? Now, whenever you strike a sound, you're hearing those partials, whether you realize it or not. I'm going to emphasize some harmonics here. Wow. Now, tell me you don't hear, or no, actually, So that would be the second harmonic. Now, notice how the first harmonic and the third one are all octaves, which is the same as the fundamental tone. And as far as harmonies go, you can't get more pure than an octave, because it's the same sound, only higher or lower. And the dirty intervals are the even harmonics. The second, which is a 5th, the 4th harmonic is a major third. Do, 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 right? Do, re, mi, from the octave up to the major third above the second octave. Here's the first one. So the fundamental, the first octave, second octave, and the major third. Now, what decides the color of a sound is which of those harmonics, those subdivisions of the string, camel, which of those are louder or quieter. Okay, so now listen to this. A flute, let's see, a clarinet has a conic bore. So here's your mouthpiece, and here's this, sorry, not a conic bore, a cylindrical bore, meaning it's the same size from beginning to end, okay? And you only get the pure harmonics. So you get the consonances. So if you blow ba, ba, you're gonna get ma, and you're gonna get ma, and you can't tell their harmonies because they're the same fucking note. Sorry. Now, a flute has a conic bore. It starts smaller and gets bigger. Okay? And what happens there is it emphasizes the higher up, dirtier harmonics, the dissonances. So we have da, da, and we have da. It's a consonance. A consonance. And the dissonances are da, da, right? You can feel the space between these notes. You can feel there's something between them. Sorry, that's a fucking third. Da, da, da. You can feel the space between them. Now, anything smaller than that 4th I just played is a dissonance, right? Thirds are dissonances. Seconds are dissonances. Single steps are dissonances. So, what happens in a flute versus a clarinet is that the conic bore, which gets bigger, pushes those higher up harmonics that you can't hear against that metal so that they ring out really loud. And if you didn't have the density of all those dirty notes that you don't know you're hearing, you couldn't hear the flute because the sine tone would be so high up that it'd be incredibly thin, you wouldn't even perceive it. Now with the clarinet, you want that because you have a reed, which is a nice quacky sound, right? You're getting a like a sawtooth wave. And you want to emphasize those purities to have a nice, thick, open, pure sound. So therefore, the color of any sound is based on which subdivisions of this vibration are louder or quieter. A sine tone which is what a clarinet puts out, is sinusoidal. It's logarithmic, okay? Now a sawtooth wave, we're going to start at the top volume and drop to 0, and then start again and drop to 0, and then start again and stop to 0. That's what they call it a sawtooth wave. That gives you a squawky sound. So the noise of this abruptness here pushes the higher partials loud enough that you can hear them. And I'm going to explain what distortion is to emphasize that. Now here's where we get into distortion. This is a square wave, okay? Now watch this. Here's a sinusoidal wave, okay? And then I'm going to chop off the part where the tone turns around. And now look what you've got. You've got a curve chopped off with these big flat spots. And that flat spot, as we know, sounds like noise. So here's what distortion does. With distortion, let's just say this is your tone of your guitar, bing, right? And this is as loud. This is 0 decibels, and this is, you know, the very top, okay? And this is the very bottom. Now you crank this shit so loud that it's out of the ballpark, okay? Now look what just happened. If this is the capacity for flow, we just took something this shape and made it into this shape, a square wave, okay? And these abrupt drop-offs are perceived as noise. There's an effect called the MXR blue box. And what it does is it squares off your tone and then halves the voltage, which brings you down 1 octave, because the octave is either double the pitch or quadruple the pitch or half the pitch or a quarter of the pitch. So it cuts it in half and you get a sub octave of a square wave, and which you can have a fuzzy, colorful fuzz, because instead of distortion on the higher stuff that we chopped off, you get it down in the bass because you have an octave lower, and you can get that birthday party colored distortion where it's, you know, instead of just like the feedback or, you know, the sound of this is my fingers on the guitar strings. Instead of just that, you have a sub octave that goes and you can have this crazy colorful fuzz. So I think that basically explains tone versus noise and periodicity versus aperiodicity. And the next thing I'm going to do is how to construct instrumental sounds and the components of instrumental sounds.